Welcome everyone to the 2021 Girls in STEM Olympics panel discussion. I'm your moderator, Simrat Sodhi, and with me I have four very inspirational women that I'm very excited for you to meet throughout this panel discussion. I have with me Emily Assuncano, Vivian Nguyen, Gauri Agarwal, and Megan Gran. So I'm going to let the ladies introduce themselves. Emily, why don't we start with you? Would you be able to give us a brief introduction as to your role, what you're currently doing, and kind of your background?
I guess A's, you always pick on the A's first. Sure. Hi, my name is Emily Assuncano. I am a director currently at Metrolinx. I work on the Eglinton Crosstown project. Prior to that, I used to work at TTC for about almost 9 years in transportation. So I was a manager there for closures and diversions. And before that, because I am on my third career path, I worked in automotive manufacturing. So I worked there for 15 years. And the way I got into engineering, I'm a mechanical engineer. I went to study at U of T, University of Toronto, and I got there via the TOPS program. In fact, I'm aging myself, but 30 years ago, I graduated from I was the first ever TOPS engineering, TOPS program grad at Mark Arnault. It was the first pilot project that they created to kind of encourage not just girls, just STEM altogether, because they were finding that a lot of students were not going into the STEM fields. So they were, struggling. So they renamed overly secondary to Mark Arnault, created the Mark Arnault, the TOPS program to kind of encourage kids, boys and girls, into the STEM fields. And I'm actually, I always say I'm the poster child. I'm the actual, a woman that, a girl at the time that didn't think engineering was an option for me. And then because I was exposed via the TOPS curriculum and encouraged by my teachers at the time, I ended up becoming an engineer. So I'm not going to tell you how many years I've been in the field, but also close enough. And here I am. And somehow got conned by Shrila to get onto the panelists, but thank you.
Well, we're very happy Shrila did that. We'll touch base with you again, Emily. Vivian, do you want to give us a brief introduction?
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. My name is Vivian. I'm currently a fourth-year student in medical laboratory science at the Ontario Tech University. I'm currently on a clinical placement at Mount Sinai Hospital in downtown Toronto, and I will speak more about what I'm doing currently. I was first involved in STEM through my high school robotics team. So I'm actually an alumni of the first robotics team, 1241. I started as a student back in 2011, and I've been a mentor since 2014 to 2020. And I was mainly involved in the electrical sub-teams and scouting at competitions and some outreach as well. I was also fortunate to be the recipient of the 2020 Woody Flowers Finalist Award at the first Ontario Provincial Championships. So that's a huge honor. After I graduated from high school, I went to the University of Waterloo to pursue biology. When I was at Waterloo, I was able to explore a lot of different science fields due to my co-op program. All of my jobs were pretty much lab jobs, but they varied between cancer research at the University of Toronto. I've worked for a seed company called Pioneer doing research for their hybrid canola plants. And I've also done quality control at Mill Street Brewery. So from this, I established that I really enjoy working in the lab. I like being hands-on, I like science. But in terms of future career aspects, I knew that I wanted to do something in healthcare. So I did more research and I heard about the medical laboratory science program through my sister. Overall, I'm really happy that I found this program. I feel like I can, apply my strengths in a field that I care about. And some more information on medical laboratory science. Essentially what I'm doing right now is I'm studying to be a registered medical laboratory technologist, or what we call MLTs. And what they do is that they essentially work in a medical laboratory, either in a hospital or a private lab. And what they do is that they work behind the scenes to run diagnostic tests on patient samples that come in. So we get the results back to doctors so that they can make a decision on a patient's diagnosis or course of treatment. For example, patients who are diagnosed with diabetes or cancers, any kind of infection, or even COVID-19 right now, there are MLTs that are in the background analyzing these results so that you can get your answers. Yeah, so I'm still working towards my career, and that's essentially my involvement in STEM for the past 10 years.
Great, thanks so much, Vivian. And Megan, would you be able to give us a little bit of an insight into where you are currently and how you got there?
Sure. So my name is Megan Gran, and I am a fourth-year space engineering student at York University. I'm in my fourth year, but not my final year. There's about 2 more years to go left in my program. I've been working at co-op as well, so I work at KPM Power's and Mechanical and Electrical Engineering co-op, and as well, I am also a FIRST robotics alumni, so I was part of Llewellyn Robotics team number 4069. I was the electrical lead and the team captain when I was in high school, and I've mentored a little bit throughout the years, volunteering at competitions. And I've worked on as well some more robotics and rocketry projects since starting in university. So in 2019, I was able to build and launch a rocket with the European Space Agency, and for robots, I competed in a few different university competitions, like the Mars rover competition in 2018. And so far, that is the most of my engineering history.
Great, thanks so much, Megan. We're definitely going to touch on the robots or the rockets, because the moment I saw that, I was like, I need to ask Megan a lot more questions about it. So we'll definitely touch base later with that. Corey, do you want to give us a brief overview of your background and how you got to where you are right now?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on the panel today. I'm currently the Biomedical Innovation Project Manager at the Kids Hospital. So I work with researchers on their advanced research projects to help turn them into patient therapies. So we do that by either licensing it out to bigger companies who can take that research through clinical trials and turn it into a product, or find investors who can help to turn it into a company that can take it through clinical trials. So it's a really cool intersection of business and science. I guess a little bit of academic background. I did my undergrad at Western in science, and I love science. I really love the discovery portion of that. I really like the ability to figure out something new, and I wanted to have a career in science where I was able to make a really big impact in healthcare, similar to what Vivian said, helping patient lives. And so I actually got intrigued by business because I think the intersection, you're able to have a big impact and turn discovery into practical application. So I did my MBA at the Degree School of Business at McMaster. I guess anything else, a little bit about my career. So I've done several co-ops and had several jobs in various areas of the healthcare industry. So I've worked for Bayless Medical, which is a medical device company. I've worked for Joseph Brand Hospital, now Kids Hospital. I've also helped McMaster University with their health innovation initiative. So kind of all over the space, all in the kind of new tech, new innovation world, and all in that little intersection of science and healthcare and business. So it's been a fun time, and happy to share any thoughts and learnings with this panel today.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction as to who I am. So it's always great to have Team 1241 reach out. I'm an alumni from the team. So I started off as a student, then went on to mentor, and then eventually have been involved in FIRST since then, either through being a consultant or advising as much as I can, and then being a volunteer and a judge as well. So it's been great to have that FIRST involvement. And currently I'm a fourth-year medical student at the University of Cambridge, not Cambridge, Ontario. You cross over an ocean in the United Kingdom. And before that, I did my honor specialization in genetics at Western. I did my master's in science and biotechnology at Johns Hopkins University, came back to Toronto, and I worked at Bayer, the pharmaceutical company, in their ophthalmology division. And then when I was up for a promotion, I decided probably best to get back into school and rack up some more debt. So now I'm back in school, and I'll be graduating in 2024 from this medical degree. So I'm so excited. I'm going to talk a little bit less about myself, though. This is all about the panelists. So I'm so excited to launch into some of our questions. Emily, I'm going to turn it back to you since I started off with your bio first. I guess the first question I want to know is, what's the best advice that you've ever received?
Came from my grandmother, and it's funny, in my household, the women ruled. Back then, it was always the women that were the hard workers and stuff. And with my grandmother's, basically, it's work. Life is work. If you want to succeed, you just have to work hard and get it done. Nobody's going to come and rescue you. So if you want to get things done and get them done right, just do it yourself. So, like you see, with my two boys, when I ask them to do something and they take too long, I'm like, fine, whatever, I'll just do it myself. But that's, in a nutshell, is, both at work and even even personally, when I'm sitting there and, doing the boot camp, which I try to tend to do once in a while. But yeah, it's hard work does equal success. You reap what you sow. I know it sounds like, cliche, but that's basically what my grandma taught me.
I mean, that's great advice for anybody. It definitely has helped you in your career as well. Has this been a mantra that's kind of been in your family now as well, that all the women kind of adopt, or is this something where you kind of felt a little bit more of a connection to it?
Well, say my grandmother, she was the official breadwinner at that time. My grandfather was an older man, but yeah, it's always worked. And in fact, I used to joke around in my first job when I was in automotive. Every few months, I would get hauled into the office and given a raise. And for me, I'd be like, well, why? And he goes, well, you're working. And I'm like, well, yeah, but you told me to. Like, so I'm always, working. And when you become efficient, you start taking on more work, and then they just rewarded you. So it was very fortunate, to work in a company. It was Magna, and everybody hears horror story of Magna, but again, I worked at a plant that was unique. Each plant had its own little culture, and my, managers all rewarded me for the hard work. So again, that's what I try to teach my sons and any other, um, people that I meet, girls and boys, is that, yeah, nobody owes you a living. You have to go get it yourself. If you want to succeed, you need to put in the work, period. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad your grandma's legacy is living on, because those are great words to live by. Megan, I'm going to ask you the same question. What's the best advice that you've received?
Probably just to, be yourself and not to care what anyone else thinks, because, you can put all this energy in trying to, make someone else happy or do something that you think other people are going to like, but at the end of the day, people only see like a piece of your life, and you only share parts of your life that you want to, so just do what makes you happy, just do what you like, instead of trying to, make other people happy.
And has there been a moment in your life where either someone has said, maybe you shouldn't try this, or maybe you shouldn't do this, and you've kind of, done it regardless? How did it feel? Did you, what were your thoughts kind of during that moment?
Yeah, I think, of course, like with engineering, it's always a bit of like, it was always kind of an undertone that, guys are, more the ones into engineering and into cars and things like that. But I think, yeah, I just think throughout high school, at least, like I didn't even think about it very much. I didn't really consider what other people thought, like I remember hearing some comments here and there, but I didn't attribute it to them, because I was a woman, like, saying that I shouldn't go into engineering and things like that because I was a woman. I was just like, oh, well, I don't think you see that I actually enjoy this stuff. So, but, now getting older and realizing, the deep-rooted societal differences that cause them to say that kind of thing. But, yeah, no, I think, yeah, in terms of engineering, people say that you should do something else or something like that. But, yeah, I just kept doing my own thing because I like it.
Well, I'm glad you decided to stick with what you loved and continue down that path. That's obviously a great choice for where you are currently. And then, Gori, were you always passionate about STEM? Was it your first choice as a career path? And like, when did you come to that realization that you really wanted to pursue STEM?
Yeah, great question. I can't remember how I stumbled into science. I think early on, I remember, my first job wish was to be a firefighter, but eventually I think I wanted to be a teacher for a really long time, but I still didn't really know what I would teach. And I was actually really interested in history and French and a lot of the arts as well. But I also had really great science teachers, and I really enjoyed that process of discovery. I really liked that in my science classes, there were a bunch of smart people who were willing to be wrong to try to find out what was right. And that kind of learning environment always intrigued me. So that's what kind of pushed me to pursue a science degree in undergrad rather than something more towards teaching or the arts. Although I did take a lot of classes in those. Yeah, because there's value to learn in all subjects, right? So yeah, that's kind of what pushed me into STEM. And then obviously undergrad, being in science, you get a lot more exposure to different people who are pursuing different paths in science. So not just research or not just med school, as a lot of my friends were pursuing, but a ton of other different types of careers. And then business school as well helped expose me to a lot of different careers in STEM and healthcare. So yeah, I think that would be sort of how it all started.
Great. And is there any like inspirational people that kind of like influenced your journey, or some that you like look up to that you're like, I really want to do this, or this person, like I just want to follow what they've done?
Yeah, good question. So definitely I would say I would not be where I am today without some really amazing people who have been in my corner and helping me figure things out. And part of that is also just, doing the work to find those people. I think being inspired by cool people in your field or outside your field can be a huge motivator on those days where you're like, maybe not loving your job so much, or maybe not, loving everything. Again, some really great teachers and profs that I've had are big. Some really great bosses during my co-op who encouraged me to explore the field, encouraged me to really pursue my interests. And honestly, Twitter has been a great place to discover some people who are great thought leaders, people I look up to, especially in healthcare. I find people who can give very honest commentary on what's going on in the industry and how to improve things are people that motivate me for sure.
Great, thanks so much. I'm so happy you said Twitter, because that's really accessible for everyone. It's good to kind of hear that. Vivian, you mentioned so much about where you are currently and how you got to where you are, and the path that you've kind of taken. And I'm sure, as most people on the panel, that you have a lot of varied interests, maybe outside of the STEM field. How did you choose then to settle into this life of STEM? And how did you kind of make that career decision, where you might have had interests outside of it, you weren't really sure? How did you then end up deciding to go through that STEM and like focus on that one career path?
Thanks for your question. I still think about like how I have a lot of great interests. Like sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I just pursued art school, because that's something I also really like, right? But I think in terms of choosing STEM, I think that was kind of just always there, especially because my two older sisters, both of them are in healthcare. And one of my bigger debates was whether to go into science or engineering. When I was on my robotics team, that seemed to be pretty big pressure that a lot of people would feel, right? Like, because you're in robotics, I should go into engineering. But for me, I just felt like, it wasn't for me. I didn't think that my strengths would bring the most value there. So in terms of choosing my current path with medicine, it took a lot of research, I guess, right? Because with medicine and healthcare, there's so much, like it's so broad. There are so many different routes and registered health professions that you could pursue. So definitely researching and networking, trying to figure out other people's experiences with healthcare as well.
Great. And then do you find that you still have opportunities to explore some of those interests, either through school or outside of school?
I think there would always be opportunities if I wanted to pursue them. Currently, I think because I'm so set on healthcare right now, it's quite busy, so I think I'm just focusing on that currently. But before, yeah, with robotics, there were a lot of opportunities to explore my post-secondary education.
That's great to hear. And then Emily, because I'm gonna kind of pick on you because you're the director of Metrolinx, and maybe we'll kind of start to dive into a little bit of the questions that are societal, if we want to talk about being. But have you experienced discrimination within your leadership role, either at Metrolinx or you mentioned TTC and Magna, in any of those positions?
it's funny. I had this conversation with the DCEO, Kirsten Watson, at one point a few years back about, because she was trying to get more women into, STEM, into leadership roles, especially in the mechanical, in the industrial side. And when she asked me, was discriminated, and I was like, no, I don't remember ever being discriminated. And this was at TTC, even when I was, 15 years in automotive, Roth and Tubble. But, I remember my first job was at Ford Oakville. It was on a construction site. And I got, I was the youngest there, just graduated, 23, only female. And I was in a room full of men, trades, launching this new facility. And I remember being treated with a lot of respect. I think one of the male members had, dropped in a word, and I looked at him, I'm like, I can do worse. Don't worry about it. And they kept apologizing. So, so I always, was encouraged and all of that stuff. And then, but again, I also, with, I was on a construction site and manufacturing. There was a lot of mixed, as an engineer, I had that respect because, you were smart enough to go engineering. So people on the, front lines respected that and treated, and as long as, and I treated them with respect because they were also knowledgeable. So never had anything there. And even with TTC was fine. I hit Metrolinx, which is my recent job. I've only been there for 2.5 years. And that's when I kind of got into discrimination. And it wasn't because of my sex per se, it was my title. I was hired because of my experience with TTC. And then when dealing with some of my, the people from TTC, they wouldn't talk to me because I wasn't the VP. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to answer your email, but meanwhile, I've talked to my boss telling him, hey, this is the answer. And he says, okay, just send it. And I wouldn't get a response. And then when I would speak to the person on the other end is, well, you're not the VP. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? I mean, I'm the one who's feeding the information to the VP. Why wouldn't you, that? So that was, and I wouldn't call it, I called it elitism, right? Because everybody, always thinks that, if you have a title, you should gain respect. And for me, it was the opposite. For me, is what you do gains you respect. No matter what, if you're the CEO or the janitor. And throughout my career, I've always been that way. And I've always led people, and I've always asked people how I can help them. When I go in a role, especially with a new team, one of the first things is, you're my manager. And I said, yeah, I'm here to manage your problems. I'm here to help you, get rid of boundaries and stuff. So, and it was weird. And it just happened recently in my career. And I was like, what's going on here, right? But it's there. And as long as, your self-confidence, like Meg said, not worrying, at this point in my life, as I get older, I don't worry as much about what people think about me, because guess what? You're never going to keep everybody happy. Everybody's going to, there's going to be some of you that's not going to agree with your viewpoint. As long as you share it respectfully and, be upfront, people will respond, right? So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it definitely does. Just to kind of add on that then, like, that must be very hard, the fact that it is really your title that is causing that conflict. And you mentioned that you approach your boss about it, or like you were in discussions. So moving forward, like, how are you kind of managing to make sure that relationship and the work alongside that isn't going to suffer based off of this elitist view that someone else may have?
So for me, it was hard. It's like, I don't get frustrated much. And it's like, I always tell my bosses, when you see me cry, it's because I'm really, really angry, right? I'm really angry. That's the only time I ever cry, right? And, I'm supposed to be the emotional one. And in my life, it's the opposite. So it was just being consistent and persistent, right? And just saying, I understand, but my supervisor, the VP asked me to send this email, or then speaking to my VP, and then the next meeting, he basically stated the saying, well, hired Emily for her experience. You see her, emails, you need to respond because you're going to get an answer from her a lot quicker than you would from me anyway. So, and it's just being persistent and not backing down, right? So I won that battle.
That's great to hear. And then in general, Emily, like, what are your thoughts about, because you mentioned that you're in a couple of the industries that I would also say are very male dominated. And you mentioned as well that when you're in the room, being one of the only females, and then a young female as well. How do you think we can advance female representation in STEM related fields?
So by the way, I forgot to say, I did coach first for 4 years, Coach of the Year twice, champions the other 2 years. So anyways, so it's funny because I've always been, surrounded by males. I mean, I grew up with a single father, had a brother, Greek traditional, girls were not as good. So for me, but seeing, like you said, my grandmother, who was the strong dominant figure, I had that core of self-confidence. So it never bothered me. If anything, I joke around, who, by the way, my husband is a firefighter, Guri, so we can talk, right? I get the male jokes a lot quicker than my husband does. Like, it was funny because, I hang around with guys, I'm comfortable, and stuff. And then now I'm raising two boys. And that to me is an eye opener because, what I used to fought for, to be heard, I'm also, it's the same lesson when I'm teaching my sons, though, by the way, they are a different breed because, I never, raising them, they see me as a strong female, but some of the stuff that they come up with, I'm like, that is biology driven. Sorry. I'm like, there's no way I taught you that. So it's just, again, being confident and, and guys are no different than women. Like, it's just treat everybody the same way, you want to be treated, and and vice versa. And that's what it is with me, what you see is what you get. One of the things that I remember earlier in my career, and I don't see it as much, but I find that some female, managers think that they have to be a certain way in the work environment. And then there's different when you're going, when you're outside. And I'm like, but why? Like, if you're this way, why do you have to be, the hard one? Or why do you have to be this when you don't need to? So, but as for encouraging more girls in STEM, again, to me, it's like when I went to U of T, I remember it was a banner year that year because chemical engineering was the first cohort that was 51% females, but, mechanical, there was only 10 of us in 110, right? We were like, ones, and then you can see people gravitating to certain types of engineering, attract to certain people, which is fine. So how do you get more females? And to me, it was just exposing them first itself. I swear to God, when I first found it with my son, I was like, I wish I had this in high school, because then I would have known I wanted to go engineering, right? I was fortunate to get into TOPS and get mentored in there. But if the first Lego League was put down there, and I tried to do that in my son's grade school, trying to get that up and going. But if it's part of the curriculum and you show it, then you expose people that are minded that way, regardless of their sex. I have two boys. My oldest, he's going to be an engineer. My youngest, totally different personality, right? Am I going to push STEM on him? No, if it's not in his interest. So I think exposing kids young to, to STEM related, to their science and all of that will get rid of those barriers, and then give them the confidence to, go in and try to apply engineering. Because when I said I was going to become an engineer, that's like, ooh, that's hard, right? But again, grandmother says hard work. I had teachers that believed in me and said you would be a good engineer, and then I did. And then I got in there, and guess what? I passed. On first probation, but I passed.
Passes
right? And I graduated, right? So that's all I'm saying is guys, if you want it, just go for it, and don't let others, tell you otherwise. You know what you can accomplish, and ask for help.
Yeah, that's great advice, honestly, Emily. For Vivian, actually, Emily mentioned FIRST and how great of a program it is. I know you've had a long career within FIRST. How have you seen FIRST evolve since you first got involved? And then what would you like to kind of be seen in the program moving forward?
How has it evolved since during my time, to recap? Definitely numbers of girls that are in the program. I remember when I was a student, Simrat was my mentor, and she was the only female mentor on the team during my time as a student. And then, after, I stayed on the team for a couple years, and I think more and more, not just on Team 1241, but other teams as well, you just see more girls in the program, but not just girls in FIRST, but girls who are being involved on the technical aspects of the team. Because traditionally, you would see a lot of girls being involved on the business sides of the team. So the thing with me, like I actually initially signed up to be on the business side because I just felt like, yeah, I'm a girl, like I'd probably be better with business. But I don't know, something just didn't sit right with me. And then a couple of days later, I asked him, like, hey, could I actually change? I changed my mind. Can I be electrical or something instead? And yeah, throughout a lot of the initiatives that our team ran as well, you would see that a lot of, like, for example, with our all girls competitions, or I think there was an all girls competition in it might have been New York. Sorry, it's been a long time. But like, yeah, you just see so many girls being involved in mechanical and programming electrical aspects. And I think that's really good to see. And the second part of your question?
Yeah, sorry, the second part was just what else you want to see kind of done in the future.
Get it in the curriculum. It's a great program. It teaches you guys life skills. I remember when I first started as a coach and looking at it, it was like, oh my God, this is engineering 101, problem solving 101. And it was, and you do it in a fun way. So I think somehow we have to get that in a curriculum to show that science and technology is fun, right? You play with Lego. You played with Lego. I mean, I did it, I never got to the high school level, but to me, that needs to get part of the curriculum.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Emily.
Yeah, definitely. And Meg, you were involved in a couple of different, STEM programs. So, the Canada-wide Science Fair, the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair. You were also in FRC, and then you definitely have to talk about the Fly a Rocket program. But can you give us like a little bit of like what you've noticed within all the programs? Like, what do they have in common? And then what are some of the things that have kind of led you to be involved in these more than maybe some other programs?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I notice, it's a bit of like, I guess it's very much the like mindset between everyone. From all the programs, there's always like a friend that I've made, if not like all of them, like from the European Space Agency program, like all of us, like we still keep in contact, and like we're all very like-minded, even though we were from all different parts of the world. Like I was the only one from North America, like who went there. There was like people from all over the world, and we all still get along. And then even in FIRST, there's a bunch of friends I've made through FIRST as well, and then through Science Fair as well. And I think it's definitely the like-mindedness that brings people together. And it's not in every situation that you're going to be a best friend with every single person, but it really helped me stay motivated to stay in it when you meet someone that you end up being friends with and that you end up caring about, and you now share this interest together, and you can grow your interests together, and that to me is just really special. What was the other part of your question?
My real other main question is, can you please tell us more about this Fly a Rocket program? Because the moment I heard European Space Agency, I was like, I need to learn more about this.
Sure. So basically, it all started when one of my friends in university, she was telling me, hey, like European Space Agency's doing this, student application thing, and you get to launch a rocket, and it'll be sometime next year. It's crazy. And so I looked into it, and the European Space Agency actually runs like educational opportunities all the time, all year round. There's different ones called Fly a Satellite, so you can launch your own satellite. There's gravitational tests where you get to go to this gravitational facility and do zero gravity things. And so I did some more research on the program, and then I wrote my application. I applied, and I had to do, after I got accepted, I was like in shock, of course, and then I had to read up on more orbital mechanics and things like that. I had to complete like assignments, like continuing to qualify essentially, to make sure everyone was on the same page during the program. And then, yeah, when at the program, we just spent, I think it was a total of like 10 days that we were there. So this was happening in Norway. So I flew to Norway, skipped all my exams, deferred them all to the next month. Luckily, my profs understood. Then I yeah, we got there and then they instantly just start putting us in lectures. They're like, yep, this is the safety thing. You do not, they did a launch like the night before. They were like, yep, no one's allowed past this line. There's the toxic, like, hazard line and everything. You can't go past this. And so we got lots of different safety lectures, lots of different orbital mechanics lectures. And then at the end of the day, then every single day, we would spend the day like soldering in the lab and things like that, putting our sensors together. And then we launched a weather balloon, to check what the weather was going to be like, to find like the optimal time of the day to launch the balloon. And then we ended up launching another balloon, and then we launched the rocket. And yeah, I got to stand like 200 meters away, and it went Mach 2, or a little bit under or over Mach 2. It was very close to that from what I remember. And yeah, and it was just absolutely phenomenal. And I heard about that through professors and friends.
I think that's the reason why deferring exams really exists. I think it's for programs like that. So I think you use it the best way possible. And Gori, I think one of the questions as people were talking was just, starting out is kind of hard too, right? Like, we've had different career paths, everyone's had a different story, but getting out of high school, what to do next is a little bit tough. It's hard to understand what you're really passionate about. So do you have like a piece of practical advice for people that are starting out in their career and are at that maybe decision point of, well, what do I really want to study, or what do I really want to focus on?
Sorry. That's a really great question, and I'm still trying to figure that one out. So here's what I got so far, and hopefully it's helpful. Well, one of the things is I think it does you a disservice to try to pin down one thing. Our world is moving so fast. So many things are changing. There's new things coming up all the time. Something like a pandemic might happen and the whole world changes, and there's a whole host of new problems that need people specially equipped to solve them. And that's one thing I've really discovered, is trying to figure out what's the best path. You're never really going to get a right answer. And really the best way probably to move forward for you is figure out what you're good at. Like, figure out what you're interested in. How can you combine your interests? How can you combine your skills? What are those weaknesses that you can build out so you can better contribute to a team or better contribute to a specific problem that you want to solve? I think, figuring out the problem that you want to solve as well is a really good place to start, because you can often figure out what kind of careers or what kind of jobs are within that problem. One of the things I like to tell people is, like, people who are interested in pursuing jobs in STEM, is my job didn't exist before I had it. There was no need for it before. But as the world moves on, as technologies advance, they realize, you know what, we have a need for someone who can work with researchers. Sorry, that's my dog. Who can work with researchers, who can manage stakeholders, who understands the science and understands the business. And there was this unique need all of a sudden. And like, who knows, for some people in the audience, there might be jobs that they have one day that don't exist today. So I think trying to have it all figured out from high school to university, and even university and beyond, is just too big of a mountain to try to climb. And I really don't think there's a right path up anyways. So just have fun on the journey that you're on. Try to learn as much as you can. Emily made a great point about working hard. I think that's really important too, is just doing the best by yourself, sticking by your values, and moving forward, finding people in your corner to support you, and you'll stumble upon the right path. I'm 100% sure of it.
That's great advice, honestly, Gori. I think it is too big of a mountain to climb, and also when you're that young, at 18 years old, I mean, what I thought at 18 is definitely not what I think now. So I think you have to give yourself a little bit of time to grow into the world and kind of see the world around you as well. So Vivian, along kind of the similar lines, but you mentioned about like a really cool industry that potentially maybe wasn't that apparent beforehand. Can you give a little bit of detail about like what the industry is and like kind of the difference that it's making? You talked a little bit about diagnosis. So with COVID especially, I'm sure that's, you know, very up and coming in at the forefront. So can you give us a little bit more detail about the industry and kind of what they're doing and the difference that they're making in the world today?
For sure. So the thing is with medical laboratory science, it's so behind the scenes. Nobody knows about it or understands it really. And then even with COVID now, yes, there is more light being shed on this industry, but I find that still people they still don't understand. And with sorry, I'm losing track of my thoughts. So with in terms of making a difference, because sorry, could you actually come back to me?
Yeah, no problem. I definitely will.
Mm-hmm.
Meg, maybe I'll go to you. I wanted to ask you, you know, do you remember a specific experience where you wish you had done something different, or you know, if you were to do it over, what would you change in that moment?
Oh, there are lots of things. I try to not like think about it in that way as much because, you know, if you spend like too much time like wondering, you know, what you could have changed, what you could have done differently, it can just end up making you feel guilty about it. But then moving forwards, I find there's a lot of regrets I have in terms of studying and how I go about school and the way that I learn and things like that. And you know, just more in terms of you know, my personal life and instead of academic life, because you know, I feel like I pushed a lot of personal, social things aside in order to try to do things that would you know, be better for my career maybe, but then you know, then you end up deteriorating your mental health, you end up burning out, and I've been kind of through COVID been trying to deal with that a bit better, and so I think I've spent the last year, you know, just kind of like keeping my head down, just doing my thing, you know, just going to school and going to work, and then that's pretty much it. And so yeah, I guess that's kind of my only really regret is just not taking time to consider myself or how I learn and things like that. And so I ended up finding out throughout the pandemic that I now have ADHD, which, you know, makes a whole lot of sense now as to why, you know, learning in school and things like that felt so much more difficult. You know, I was like, why is the same tasks that everyone else is doing? Why does it feel like it's so much harder for me, but everyone else it's so much easier? But yeah, no, so I've been just working on fixing that through the pandemic. But of course, I wish I could have known, you know, 10 years ago or something like that. And, you know, maybe I would be able to do more things. But no, so now yeah, so I guess that's my only regret is, you know, working on my mental health a little bit sooner.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point, Meg. Especially that balance. I think sometimes you reach that point of burnout where you then are like, I need to start balancing my life a little bit more. So it's good for us to always do that check to make sure, you know, we're take some time to take care of ourselves as well. So yeah, excellent point for bringing that up. And then, you know, a follow-up to that previous question, Emily, by way of comparison, do you remember something that you've done or you know, something that you wish everyone was doing and maybe why?
So, you know, to Meg's point about not living with regrets, because the first one I'm like, I don't really, you know, Maya Angelou has a saying, you know, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And that's basically how I live my life. I make decisions based on what I know at the time and you move on. And as you learn, you know, you do better. So for me, you know, was my first manager role. I mean, I was 28. You know, what do we do with our hardworking people? You know, we would promote them, and it's like, hey, yeah, now you're in charge. And one of the biggest thing there is I failed. right? Took me about a year and a half to basically burn out. And then, I wish I was asked for help. But one of the things when I did ask for help and, was that they sent me to leadership school, basically start looking at these courses, and they call them in the industry soft skills. And, some of the guys scoff and, or even other people say, I don't have time for that. But investing time to how to first of all learn about yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, and learn how to work with others or even delegate, because I wasn't good at delegating. I'm a master now, you can ask my children. But it's the soft skills that's going to help you develop a team and become a self-functioning team and stuff like that. And that's what I wish people would take the time, is take that course, the active listening course or teams building skills, because it will help you. It helped my career, and I'm a big advocate. And and with my my people, I do balance that work and also asking the question. It's funny, I'm trolling LinkedIn now, and everybody's saying be a leader and be a compassionate one, and listen to your people. And I'm thinking, well, that's what I've been doing from day one. Like, I've always had interest in people. And you ask the question, how's your kid, how are your kids, how's the wife, the dog, whatever. And just asking that little thing. And the biggest thing, and taking all of these courses, is when you look at what motivates people, especially in their careers or in their job, everybody thinks it's money, and it's not. It's basically appreciation, telling them thank you or I appreciate your work. And I find that I try to do that as much, and I get results, and people are saying, wow, you're the first person that's ever listened to me and stuff. So to me, is take that time. And I learned it the hard way, I had a group full of, my first career, like I said, was a whole bunch of guys. So I'd come in the morning and I just grunt at them, and it was fine. Nobody anything. And then my next group was mostly females. And I remember, I wasn't a morning person, and I would come in, just go to my office, not saying anything, and they would get offended. And then I learned that I had to say good morning to every single one of them. And it was those little things that help. So I wish people would take the time to get to know your team. You don't have to be their best buddy, but at least, asking about that helps, right? And especially with COVID, and now as we're transitioning back to the office, it's weird. I mean, I've been there for a week and seeing people, but it's amazing how people have adapted to a different role and stuff. And it's just, saying hi and thank you or please. It's because I'm your boss doesn't mean saying just do it. No, I'm actually my kids are saying you're very polite. Yeah, man, that's only at work. But yeah, that's all it is just take time for those soft skills, because they will help you in the long run.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. Basically treating humans as humans and not just workers and employee numbers. So excellent advice, Emily. Vivian, I'll go back to you. So if you can tell us a little bit about your industry and like the difference that's making, and kind of what you're kind of thinking about it.
Thanks for coming back to me. Okay, so the reason why I got stumped earlier is because with medical laboratory science, I'll call it med lab because it's just shorter, is because it's so broad. Like, there's just way too much to it. So some of the ways that we're making a difference is, like, in addition to COVID, obviously COVID is the big thing right now, but let's say, for example, like with med lab, there are 5 major disciplines that I have to study. So there's biochemistry, microbiology, transfusion science, hematology, which is like studying leukemias, blood disorders, and histology as well. And what histology is essentially you're preparing tissue samples and biopsies, and seeing if a patient has cancer under the microscope by looking at the cells, for example. And yeah, there's so much to it. There's the aspect where, when we work in the hospital, you could be doing routine work. So somebody who is submitting a urine sample because they're not feeling well, we can make a decision based off of treatment depending on what we diagnose them with. So what do they have? Urinary tract infection, kidney infection, for example. So more, things that will kind of take longer to detect. But also, I think another really exciting thing about med lab is that it's also very fast paced. So in a hospital, when somebody's undergoing a surgery and they're losing a lot of blood, then people in the transfusion lab have to like get really quick on, issuing blood samples, being prepared to, save patients' lives, right? Yes, that's essentially, I think, the biggest difference that medical laboratory technologists are making. Essentially, we're making a difference in people's lives without people seeing it. And with MedLab, I don't see it going away anytime soon, because healthcare is always, changing. People are getting older. People are always going to get sick and need treatments.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think the one thing of being in a hospital setting that I've learned is that it is so different. There's so many jobs. I think when you first think about healthcare, it's doctor and nurse, maybe the first two jobs that come into mind. But I think there are so many different jobs. And Gora, you mentioned and you kind of said the same thing, where it's, my job maybe wasn't around a couple of years ago and now it's around. How did you even stumble upon it? Like, was it something that when you were in business school, like somebody came in to talk about it, or how did you find out more about this job that maybe didn't exist before?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I did my first co-op at Bayless Medical, which is a medical device company. And I worked on a team that was launching a medical device in the States and in Germany. And that for me was really cool to kind of see, first of all, how do you get a product into a market? How do you convince surgeons to start using this device in their surgeries? Like, that's such a big thing to ask a surgeon. So I got really interested in this side of innovation, of how do you, inventing is really cool, but then there's a whole latter half of it, of actually getting it into the hands of people who can use it to make people feel better, right? And how does that work, and how can I impact that space? So that kind of sparked my interest in new innovations. And then my third co-op, I had an opportunity to work with McMaster University in their innovation ecosystem. So what they were trying to do is, McMaster is a huge hub for health research, health innovation. There's many hospital systems, there's the university itself, there's the colleges, and they're all doing a lot of great work in health innovation, but they're kind of siloed from each other. And so what McMaster was trying to do is build connection points for all of these really cool people who are trying to solve cool problems to meet and interact, learn from each other, and potentially build out new innovations. And so that was really cool, because I got to learn so much about, where are the gaps, what's preventing people from talking to each other, how do you get an engineer and a physician and a business person to put their brains together to build out a business case that would get an investor to say, I'm going to put my money towards this because this is a really great solution. So I really had to spend a lot of time understanding all of the different players in this field. I had to learn a lot about patenting, I had to learn about regulatory, etc. So maybe not as of fun sounding things, but really important parts of this whole area of innovation. So anyways, that's how I kind of got interested. That's how I started learning about this area. One thing I should also mention is that's when I also realized that what intellectual property even means. So usually at companies where research and development takes place, or at academic institutions, any kind of research, usually the university owns the intellectual property. So there's the inventors and then the people who own it. And the people who own it, that means that they have to both pay the money for the patent costs, but can also reap the benefits. And there's lots of different ways that institutions will set up these systems. But what that also means is that the institution has a responsibility to do something with it. And so that's kind of how I stumbled into my role at Sick Kids. Is they were finding, we're sitting on this whole host of great intellectual property, great inventions that have the opportunity or the potential to do something, but we're having trouble sort of moving it down the pipeline. Either it's because researchers are not coming to us telling us they have something, or we're not, building out the business case, or we haven't built enough relationships with investors or the outside world. So when the job kind of came up, when I was looking for a job and I saw this job, I thought, this is fantastic, because this is sort of tying in the experiences I had launching a new product in those other countries in my first co-op, and then learning about this ecosystem from an academic point of view in my third co-op. So that's kind of how I stumbled towards this. I sort of had exactly the right experiences. I knew the private side of the industry and I knew the public side and the academic side. So that's kind of how I was able to get my foot in the door. But it really just started with me pursuing my interest in new innovations and trying to learn more about things.
Great, thank you so much. That's very interesting of how you got involved with it. Meg, so Gory mentions, like some of the different things of STEM that maybe people may not know about, and you really have to kind of learn and try different things to really get to it. So in your mind, if you could think, are there any common misconceptions that people have about STEM, and how can we combat some of these misconceptions and kind of change the viewpoint?
I think for STEM in general, at least like as a woman, my experience is that like typically people will still like try to put you in some kind of box. So people would be like, "Oh, you're the smart one, like you're the funny one, you're the this, you're the that," and then they kind of end up like reducing you to that. And so then it's kind of hard to be like a dynamic human being sometimes, like I find, which is just it's a very odd thing that I never found like that I never really noticed until probably this last year, that has always happened like throughout high school, like, oh, you're the one who does this, you're the one who does that. And I think a misconception is that since like so few people know like or understand like how broad STEM really is, that you can still be interested in STEM and things like that, but you can still be like you can still have other interests. So for a long time I thought like when I was growing up, for some reason I thought like being able to do makeup and being into robotics, I thought those two couldn't mix. Like you couldn't do both for some reason, because I was the nerdy girl. Like I shouldn't be good at makeup, but that literally doesn't make sense. Like that's just literally how you spend your own time, so then I just started, I was like, whatever, I'll do my own makeup and then I'll go do robotics during the day. Like who cares how I wake up in the morning, So I guess that's probably the biggest misconception that I can think of, is that you have to fit into a box, and you don't. You can do STEM all day long, and then you can go do whatever you want after. Like I have cats now. I'm a crazy cat lady, but I also build robots and things like that during my day job. I'm a dynamic human being. I don't. So yeah, I guess it's just that you don't have to fit into any kind of box.
I have a story on that. So again, always, hang out with guys in engineering. And I remember, I started my first role and I was practicing makeup because I never wore it. And I remember wearing it. And I remember one of the guys in the tool room saying, "Wow." And he goes, "Can't believe you're an engineer." And I'm like, "What?" Like, "Look at you. You look so pretty." And I said, "What does my looks have anything to do with my ability to, to finish engineering? Like, excuse me, like what? All engineers have to be ugly?" And that's what I'm saying is, when people are saying you've been discriminated, it's like, no, you call them out. You just, you turn it into a joke. You don't have to become, but you call them out. Or that was, my first job. I remember when I started off with one role, and I was sitting, and I actually got the job. Just so you know, when you guys starting out, and it was an on-phone interview, and the Mark had asked me, he goes, "How do you feel about answering phones?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" At my home, we wrestled to each other, to see who was going to get the home phone. And this is when we had old phones, right? And people like, yeah. And that's how I got the job, because again, it wasn't arrogant to say, "Oh, I'm an engineer, I can't answer phones." So I got the job, and I was sitting in front where the receptionist usually was, but there was no receptionist in the trailer that we worked out of. And then a few months later, when I was on site, there was a guy there that, came up and he goes, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Aren't you the receptionist chick?" And I turned around and I look at him, I'm like, "Actually, no, I'm the mechanical engineering chick." And he's looking at me, sorry to say chick, but, and he's like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, what does where I sit have anything to do?" So these misconceptions, and the last one I remember when I was in high school and I was peer tutoring, girls and stuff like that at the time. And I remember this one girl, she goes, "Well, I'm not good at math." And I'm like, "Okay, why not?" "Because I'm a girl." And then again, in my mind was, what does your sex have to do with your ability to understand math? Because by the way, I got my love of math from my father, right? He pushed me. And again, it's the norm. If it's normal for math to be okay, then and I didn't know any better. I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to like math, science, I grew to love it, but it was like math was intuitive for me. And had, so it's again this misconception again, and just call people out. You don't have to be, antagonistic about it. You try to, make a joke of it and stuff, but it works. And especially in this day and age, because, I find it ironic that, so many years later, because 30 years ago, we were breaking barriers, 51% in engineering. And then they're saying, well, they're still not getting the numbers. And I look at them and I'm like, but why? Why are you guys so hung up on numbers? As long as you get, people in doing an industry that you like, then it's fine. Right? My husband, he was the smart one. He got pushed into engineering because he was the smart one. He wanted to go into phys ed, but that wasn't a smart enough job. So to me, I'm saying is the STEM, like you said, it's a whole broad, world. Just know what you like and go for it, and regardless of what people say, right? And Gory, my next field will be in the biomedical, because I did do my undergrad, my thesis in Mount Sinai, breaking bones, and that's the one thing, not regret. It's just I never fell into it, but I'm going to be pursuing that because, I've got hospitals close by me. But yeah, it's like, just do what you like, and just don't let others, deter you. You know what you're capable of, and just go for it.
Emily, this worked out perfectly, because my next question for you was, what are you most tired of hearing in regards to girls in STEM, and what would you like to say about it? And I mean, there must be some sort of telepathy going on, because you really just took the words right out of my mouth. Is there anything else you want to add to that? Like, what is a question or a comment that you're just kind of like, this needs to stop, like this can't go on anymore?
It's, it's like everybody's saying we got to have more numbers and more numbers, and everybody's saying everybody's equal, but you got to look at it, right? I mean, we all STEM, you know what a distribution curve looks like. Is everything going to be 50%? No, because population changes and stuff like that. And trying to push, it's funny because it's here. Girls are in STEM. I see more and more younger females engineers, right? And I encourage both my male and female engineers. If I call them out when they have been do a good job, I tell them and you encourage them. Everybody just wants to be encouraged. And at the end, if you're a girl and you want to be a nurse instead of the doctor, that's okay. Right? If you're a girl and you're in the STEM field and you want to, have children, that's okay. Right? Because the biggest thing, guys, like I'll tell you, I mean, graduated 30 years ago, went to, university and all of that. At the end of the day, it's the people that you surround yourself. It's the family, the connections you make, your family, chosen family. That's what really matters, guys. Like a job, I'll tell you this, I'm on my third career. My first job, I was 15 years. I was expecting a nice going away, did nothing. Worked in 50 years. I mean, I quit on my own. And it was kind of disappointing because, these people have watched me grow up, right? So, but at the end of the, STEM, girls in STEM, yes, girls are just as capable as boys and vice versa. And some girls, Meg, you got ADHD. I think I developed it with the COVID, but I look at my sons, and my oldest is exactly like I was. Right? He's got the same mindset, the same, smart alecky responses. He's me, right? But he's a boy, right? Does it matter? No. Let's focus on exposing kids and not, giving them the barriers at that young age. She said, well, you're a girl, you should know. No, anybody can learn math. It's just how you teach it. And then just let it go. Like it's there. In this days, like you have that freedom to say, you have that opportunity. You can do what you want. And sometimes if it is the more traditional role, don't beat yourself up. You don't have anything to prove. As long as it makes you happy and you're comfortable with what you're doing, that's fine. And girls are just as good in math as boys. That's all I got to say.
That's right. So Gory, I guess maybe to like go off of what Emily said, if someone is experiencing, like that discrimination, or you're not that confident, and when someone has something negative to say, they kind of take it to heart. What would you say to that person, and how do you think they can make a change? And basically, what advice do you have for someone that's going through that?
Sorry, did you ask what to say to someone who's maybe going through discrimination?
Yeah, if someone is going through discrimination or just really isn't confident in pursuing a career or in anything else, what kind of advice would you be able to give them?
Oh, good question. Well, it's hard, right? It depends. In any kind of conflict, I try to give people the advice of like, try to step out of the situation, outside of yourself, and look at it from a bird's eye point of view. What was the context of what was going on? Is not to invalidate what you're feeling, but just try to get a little bit of a different perspective before you get lost in the emotional side of things. Sometimes it really helps to take some time for yourself to step away and sort through the feelings and sort through the thoughts. In terms of discrimination, though, I mean, of course, that's really serious. And I also want to encourage people that if they feel that something wrong is happening to them, to trust their gut and not be convinced out of that. That's a really important thing, to develop that intuition and knowing when your gut is telling you something. So I would definitely want to say that. And try to recognize if you have the power to change the situation. Can you speak to someone? Can you speak to your boss? Can you help people see something that maybe they didn't see before, that wasn't right? Or if the situation isn't going to change, maybe you have to remove yourself from that situation. And I think that that's valid too. One of the great things about where we're at right now in the industry, at least speaking to my own industry, is that I find like I've been able to hop around the industry quite a bit. And that's because, you no longer have to stay in one place to develop your career. You can move place to place, and it's becoming more and more normal. And I think that definitely if you're in a situation that is kind of beating you down, you're facing discrimination or you're facing negativity day in and day out, and you don't really have the power to change that, well, what you do have the power to do is remove yourself from that situation and go to a place where you can grow and really develop your own skills and build confidence, and then build better environments for other people.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And Vivian, you mentored, through the first program, mentored a lot of females, and as you mentioned, more and more females coming into the program. If someone came up to you and was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, I don't know what I want to do in the future, I'm so confused, what were some pieces of advice that you could give them?
It's okay to not know. Take some time to figure out, like I said, like do a lot of research. And I think it's important to find your niche as well. Everybody has different strengths and weaknesses. So definitely take some time to explore that. Don't be afraid to figure out what those are. I think another thing, important thing to point out is that when you don't know what you want to do, or when you do have role models and people that you look up to, it's very easy to compare yourself to them. And sometimes it feels bad, like, oh man, like I'm useless, like I don't know, I'm not doing anything good in my life, and this person here has accomplished so much. But it's really important to remember that everybody starts off somewhere. Just find your niche. Take some time to think about where your values are, and what kind of fields would align with that, with your values and your strengths. And
Oh, that's great advice as well. Megan, I want to ask you, with your job, aerospace engineering, and going through a bunch of these programs, if there was one that you had to be like, this was the thing that really like changed my life, I wouldn't be where I am without it, what would that one thing be?
I'm not sure if there's only one thing, because it all was kind of like a snowball effect. I guess in terms of like today, probably the European Space Engineering program, the European Space Agency program, that like changed a lot on my perspective and my passions and everything. But in terms of like all the way back to the beginning, it would be the introduction to robotics in general. That would be the, change my entire path. Because my first introduction to robotics, I was 10 years old. I had just switched schools, and my grade 5 teacher, he was like, hey, like we have this little like Lego robot thing, if we could start a robotics club if you guys want, like just go to my classroom, like meet in my classroom, and we'll just see if we have any kids there. And so there was like maybe 8 kids, and we would like compete like just within between the 8 of us, and we had like 1 or 2 robots, and we would just like eat pizza and fiddle around with the robot, and then that was like pretty much my introduction to robotics. And then I would go home every day, and that's all I talked about to my parents, and they were like, I think we should do something about this. So then, my 12th birthday present was an Arduino Uno, and my 16th birthday present was a Raspberry Pi, like the microcontroller. So then, like, honestly, it's just kind of the support, because when you're 10, when you're 12, even when you're 16, you can't do anything. You don't have the power to do anything as much as an adult would. Even like financially, even knowledge-wise, you haven't been anywhere on the world yet. And so my parents knew, they've heard about these things, and so they got me these things, and now I work on, now my job is robots and things like that. So I think that would be the introduction, the very beginning, when I was just a kid.
I love those presents, and I love that that's what you're getting now. And said, Lori, so Meg touched on a good point about like support systems. So, for some people that maybe their support system isn't being supportive, what advice do you have for someone that's going through that right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So if your support system isn't being supportive, well, first of all, I want to say that if you can recognize that the people, either the people who are meant to be supporting you or the people you're surrounding yourself by, aren't necessarily contributing to your energy in the right way, that's already a huge first step that shows that you have a lot of clarity about who you are and who you want to be and how you need to get there. So I think that, first of all, should be applauded. In terms of what to do about that, I think you have to recognize that, like, no one's going to care about you more than yourself, and you're going to be your biggest advocate, both in your career and outside of your career. And so you have to be super protective of your energy, of your confidence, and of your ability to do those things. So if that means distancing yourself from some people who aren't as supportive, I think that's important to recognize. Sometimes that's really hard to do. And my best way of doing that is try to focus on the commonalities, try to focus on the, if it's your parents, for instance, hopefully not, but let's say it is your parents, for instance, focus on the fact that they love you. They may not understand exactly what you need in this moment, but they still love you, and just take peace in that, I guess. And then I guess other step beyond that would just try to find people who are in your corner and who are supportive. And there are a number of ways of doing this. Obviously, things like robotics or any other clubs that you're a part of where you share similar interests with other people. Like I said, Twitter has been a great way for me to find other like-minded people in my industry. And so I honestly just reach out to them. Hey, you've never met me. I follow you on Twitter. I think you're really cool. Do you want to have a quick chat for 20 minutes? And that's the spark of, a new relationship, professional or mentorship or whatever it is. And that's kind of how you meet people, right? You find something that you align with, and you go from there, and you kind of start to find your personal board of advisors, people who are in your corner, who kind of help you see what you want when sometimes it's a little cloudy, and you kind of go from there.
No, that's great advice. Emily, I want to touch upon, you mentioned your grandmother's amazing words, but let's say someone isn't ready to, do the really hard thing, and they're a little bit worried, like, maybe I'm not smart enough to do this, maybe I won't get in, I can't do this, maybe I'm going to like fail out of like, my third year, and then it's going to be all a waste. What kind of like advice or practical tips do you think that individual can kind of use or try to get over, or, we're looking for that industry, but basically any advice that you can kind of give that person that's kind of scared to go into that hard thing?
It's funny because when as a coach, when we would do all this, and I'm saying, okay, how are we going to solve it? Well, I don't know. Or they're saying, well, it can't be done, and all I kept asking them was, why not? It's like, I don't say why, I say, why not? Right? And then it would give them like, well, what do you have to do? Just try it. Because, and this is what I also advocate with everybody, is a mistake is a learning moment. So, I find, and especially it's funny, I was talking to my youngest cousin who, I'm into mechanical engineering and did have an influence on that, right? He's 10 years younger. And he's like, Emily, everybody keeps coming to me for decisions. Like, why is that? They're older than me. They should know. Why are they coming to me? And I'm like, because you're an engineer. And he's like, what? It goes, because an engineer, you're trained to make logical decisions. That's what you're a decision maker. And a lot of people are afraid to make decisions because they're afraid of failure. And then when you look at it saying, yes, okay, well, fine, what happens if it goes wrong? But what's the worst that can happen? Well, this. And okay, well, how would you fix it? Well, I'll do that. So you just have to walk them through it. And the funny part is, I was doing this, with my career, whatever. Then one of my kids, opposite of me, anxiety, it's like, well, I don't want to, be scared to do stuff. And I had to learn, and one of the biggest lessons in my life is not everybody is like me. Not everybody's self-motivated or driven, right? You have people that are comfortable, like, staying in the same career for 30, 40 years. They're comfortable, right? So for me, it's just, talking them through that difficult situation, and then doing okay, so what happens next? If this goes wrong, what would you do? And what you do, and you walk them through, and then you basically, give them the confidence, or they get their confidence to say, okay, well, why not? I should try it. What do I've got to lose? And that's all I can say is, you're not sure, try it. It could work. Or if it doesn't, just you're not going to do that again, right? As long as you learn mistakes. And then my other favorite saying is what's the definition of insanity? Right? Doing the things the same, right? So if you're not happy in a situation, like Gori says, move, do something different. What do you've got to lose?
Sorry, I just really wanted to comment quickly. Like, you made such a great point about not having all the answers and still having to move forward and being okay with that. In business school, there was a lot of science students in my program, and I have to tell you, the fear in their eyes when in business you have to make ambiguous decisions all the time with imperfect information. And as science students, when you're so used to just doing the work to find the data, it would be really funny, but it's so true, and it's such a life skill, just being able to work with ambiguity.
True.
Yeah, definitely. And so you both mentioned, Emily, you mentioned, being scared, or you kind of mentioned being scared in like even school in the two different ways. Have you guys been scared on the job? Gori, I'll start with you and then we'll go to Emily after that.
Good question. I don't know if I've ever felt fear. I want to distinguish that fear and discomfort are two very different things. Being uncomfortable, Emily pointed this out really well, that being uncomfortable because you're scared of making a wrong decision and what that might mean is a little bit different than being afraid to make a decision at all. Obviously, if you're in a workplace which is causing you to feel fear on a day-to-day, I wouldn't suggest that as a career path or as a place you continue to work. But that discomfort of, I'm scared of doing something wrong. I think being able to recognize it, first step, knowing who you can lean on. So I've had really great managers who I've been able to speak openly to and say, I know I'm capable of making this decision. I'm concerned that if this goes wrong, this is going to have a real impact to the team. Can you let me know, what are going to be the implications of this decision? If I need more data to make this decision, make that ask of your manager. And Emily pointed this out before, your manager is meant to help you make those decisions and empower you, right? So being able to have those conversations is actually quite important, because if you kind of just sit there and you're scared of looking dumb, let's say, in front of your manager, well, that's not helping anyone, right? So you have to be able to recognize when you need help and ask for it, and ask for it in an empowered way. I want to be able to make this decision and feel good about it. How can you help me? I think that's a really good way to go about it.
Yeah, that's excellent. Emily, I'll ask you the same question. Have you been scared on the job of either failing, that kind of discomfort that Gori mentioned as well?
It's every day. No, it's true. It's funny because, I started off my first career, I made widgets, I made parts, what the worst can happen. And then now I'm, on the Metrolinx, I was in charge of Eglinton station. That station alone is $500 million. And so decisions you make, the implications. So I try not to go there. And so what you do is if you're not sure and this is what I've also tell, my young engineers and managers, I said, well, give me an estimate. And they're like, well, how do I do that? I was saying, well, just write down your assumptions, right? It's like, if you make the decision and you make it say, okay, I went with A because of this, and then it goes wrong. Well, guess what? Now to do differently. So for me is, if you're not sure and all that, then you rely on your team and you ask them. And I've no problem. I'll sit there, especially in TTC, there was a lot of this stuff, subway closures. I created that whole template at how to shut it down, and I was the most vilified person in Toronto. I get it. But at the end of the day is every time you tried something, you looked at the data, you looked at what the response was, and then you tweaked it and you got it better. Okay, you fixed this issue, and then you go on and rely on your team, and that's what they're there for. They're the expertise. I always used to say, when my boss would say go do this, and I'd be like, I have no idea where to start, right? And so my first thing, and I learned that early in my career, is you go to the frontline workers. They know where the problems are, and they know the solutions. They just don't feel confident in their abilities to speak up. So I used to go to them and say, okay, I got to do this. How do I do it, Frank? And they would explain the process, and then I would go to his supervisor and saying, so can I do this? She goes, oh yeah, go see Frank. But I already knew because I already had spoken that. So, it's okay not to know all the answers. And now that I'm a director, and as I, go up in ranks, it's fine to admit to say, I don't know what to do, guys. What would you do, or how can we fix it? What are the issues? You drop down, and then you solicit their advice, because that's what they're there for, right? Not one person's going to all have all the answers, but collectively you do get to a solution. And as long as you write down your assumptions, and if it goes wrong, you tweak it and it gets better, and if it goes right, you pat yourself on your back and say, yeah, I'm brilliant. But yeah, it's okay. And discomfort makes you feel it makes you sharper, because the fear of failure, the fear that you're going to be the thing, it also makes you focus a little bit more on the problem to make sure that you do get to the right solution.
No, it's an excellent point. That teamwork makes the dream work.
I'm all about teamwork.
I'll make sure that the audience knows. So in our last 10 minutes, we're going to be accepting questions from the audience. So if you have any, please feel free to put them in the chat, and then we'll get them on our screen, and then we'll be able to ask them. But while we're getting some questions being typed into the chat, I'll kind of ask Megan, Viv, there was I asked Corey and Emily about, when you're scared, you're uncomfortable, kind of things to do. If there's positive affirmations that you have said to yourself when, things are stressed out and you're like, oh no, I need to be able to do this. What are some of those either quotes or inspirational things that you always remember and you make sure, okay, don't worry, I got this. Meg, I'll start with you and then we'll go to Vivian.
Yeah, I think it's just remembering, who you are, because sometimes I'm working on schoolwork. Schoolwork is probably for me the biggest challenge, and I go, oh my gosh, I can't do these, too many assignments, too much to do, too many deadlines, too many everything. And then yeah, I just kind of remember what am I working towards? What do I really want? And then I think of the co-op jobs that I've had. I think of how I want to do those, I want to work doing that for the rest of my life, and getting my degree will help me be able to do that and get more knowledge to do that and do even bigger things. And so yeah, just remembering the reason why I'm really here, why I'm really doing it, really makes me kind of realize why I should be working on my assignments and making sure I'm getting them done, making time for it. And it makes it a little bit less overwhelming. And in some cases, that actually might help you point you in a different direction. And that is kind of what pointed me to do co-op, actually, because, yeah, it was kind of well, what am I really here for? What's the point, of all of these assignments, so many years of school? What is the point? And then I do co-op, and then I'm yeah, I this. This is what I want to do. This is why I'm here. So, yeah. So it's great to just keep asking yourself questions what's pushing you forward? What was the reason that you started here?
Yeah, the inner dialogue is so important. So Vivian, same question. Any inspirational quotes, anything that you say in the mirror to pump yourself up?
Yeah, so this is actually kind of bouncing off of what Corey was saying earlier, that you are your biggest advocate. At the same time, I feel like you yourself can also be your biggest enemy. At least, yeah, for a lot of women and for myself, I feel like it's a lot of things to do with self-confidence that holds me back. So in times where I feel afraid on the job, or if it's a stressful situation or stuff like that, I just have to remind myself that I can do it. Just be confident, because I've done this before. And I just have to remind myself not to hold myself back. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, definitely excellent point. So we have a question from the audience. I'll kind of leave this open to anybody in the panel that wants to kind of pipe in and say something about it. So if anyone has advice for those struggling to manage balancing a healthy social life with a successful professional life. So any kind of advice or tips that you can give for someone that's trying to balance and kind of do both?
For me personally, like I just, for a long time, I just decided to not have a social life. So I would say definitely don't do that. But I think the biggest thing that has helped me is just surrounding yourself with people who have similar interests, and then it's kind of like the things that you need to get done, you might end up just kind of doing together. And then that's how, better relationships form, better bonds form. It's also good to have people outside of, what you're doing all the time to give you like another perspective and to help refresh things a little bit and do things differently. But yeah, definitely finding people, who you look up to. Like try to be their friend, try to talk to them, try to get to know them, and because everyone needs a friend. And so yeah, just talk to the people that you look up to, that you admire, and with similar interests. And then it might be things that were work before might now be more social than they used to be.
Emily, I saw that you maybe wanted to say something. Anything that you would want to add to that?
You can't do it all. I tried. Right. And it's funny because I look at my career, my first one was automotive, 60-hour work weeks. That's the norm, but you got rewarded. That's true. And then I decided to have children because that was one of the goals in my life. And I remember, my first mat leave, I felt weird because I was so used to just doing. And I had this role. And now all of a sudden I'm home with the kid. And it was like, I'm not important anymore, even though I was the sole provider, caregiver of my child, right? And then, feel that guilt of going back to work and leaving your child when they were sick. And with my first one, it was a struggle for me to kind of balance because your career, they want you there, but your kid's home and sick. And I remember having my, my review with my boss that first year, and he's saying, well, you're always sick. And I'm thinking, well, I haven't been sick. I called in sick because of my child, right? But 15, like at the time I was like there, 12 years, never called in sick once. And now you're going to ding me that. But it's different. But that was the private sector automotive. And one regret would have been not speaking up. Well, I did speak up, but it's just, public sector, it's a little bit more accommodating and stuff like that. And I think COVID now has broken all barriers and the fact that, whatever. And so now it's become the norm. But it's at the end of the day, I'm on my third career. And what I miss the most are the people that I work with. Not necessarily the job. The job was there. It's fine. It's whatever. It's the people. And to do that is, you take the time to talk to people, ask them questions. And then you also have to lead by example. I'll sit there, it's funny when some of my employees will come to me and ask me, is it okay if I leave early? And I look at them, I'm like, do you ask me permission to stay late? And they're like, what? I said, well, every time you work an extra hour, do you ask me permission? He goes, no. I said, so why? I said, you're an adult. I trust that you do your work. So if you have to go in early or you have to take a time off, that's fine. Go ahead and do it. And it's funny when they're on vacation and I see them answering emails, I yell at them. What are you doing? Turn it off. It's like if I as your manager have not done the job so successfully that you cannot leave without feeling that you feel that you have to answer something when you're away, then I'm failing. I'm not giving you the tools to know that I can go for a day off or go for a week off and the job will still get done. But it's you have to do that. And and because at the end of the day, it's what your family, you're the people that with, that's really matter. And you working yourself to try to please everybody and then burning out and then becoming sick, it's not going to help anybody. So yeah, from 8 to 5 or whatever your working hours, you work hard, but then shut it off and know that the world can wait till the next time you pick up that phone or that tablet or whatever. But I'm still learning it some days. Learning it some days.
Gori and Vivian, anything else that you'd want to add to the question of having that balance in life?
Sure, that's add. So personally, this is something I'm actually really struggling with at the moment. School is just really hectic. Like I basically have to, I'm working full time on my clinical placement and I have to go home and then study for the next day. And then, obviously I would love to have a balanced social life if I could, but I'm also trying to balance a research project as well. Yeah, I'd love to see my friends, but I think at the end of the day, I have to be able to prioritize and take care of myself, my mental health. In terms of social life, yeah, my friends and family, they will always be there, hopefully. But like, yeah, in the long run, like it's okay to take a step back and prioritize as well. It's why I had to step away from my robotics team so that I could focus on my career. Because yeah, I know that in the future, if I want to go back, I think I can go back anytime I'd like. Yeah, just essentially just take care of yourself and your mental health.
Gloria, I have another question that came in, so maybe I'll direct it at you so we can get this one answered as well. So, those times where you lose focus and you're like, what, I'm done. I'm too tired. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go to an island and just live off of that instead. What are some of the tips for getting yourself, motivated again to get back on those goals and achieve some of those goals?
Good question. First of all, it's important to note that goals change over time, motivations change over time. I was just commenting on this to a friend that in my MBA, being surrounded by people who wanted to make it in finance and consulting, you get really ambitious and very career driven. And then with COVID, I took a really big reset. I got a puppy. Like I all of a sudden cared a lot about my time outside of work. And so, being in the office all the time, getting promoted every year suddenly became less of a priority. I wanted to get home at a decent time, have time to walk my dog and make myself a good dinner, So anyways, all to say that your goals over time will change as you grow up and as you learn new things, and that's okay. That's totally fine. And you shouldn't feel any kind of shame or comparison with other people who maybe are more career driven or not. It shouldn't make you feel like you're not doing something. I think it comes back to protecting your own energy and knowing what fulfills you. There are days, of course, when I'm happy with how everything is going, but I'm, losing focus and I want to get motivated again. So, just recognizing that we're all going to have those days. It's okay to kind of just say, today wasn't a good day. Tomorrow's going to be better. I'm going to go to sleep right now and wake up and put this day behind me. I think that's totally fine. And I like to sort of write out my goals. And I don't have like, in a year I want to do this, but just generally I want to learn this new skill by the end of the year. So I kind of check in on that. Have I been making moves towards learning that new skill? And that sometimes gets me motivated if I can come up with like a small action that I can do towards that goal. I'm going to read a couple articles on design tomorrow, and that's going to make me feel like I'm back on track with my goals. Even though it's the tiniest step, at least it is a step in that direction. Talking to people who are your biggest cheerleaders is always a really good way to get yourself motivated again. And yeah, just checking in with yourself. Is like you feel unfocused because maybe this goal isn't aligning with you anymore. It's okay to change it.
Great. So we have a lot of questions coming in, so I'll pass it over to the next question. So Meg, how do you distinguish between something that's an interest and a hobby and one that you want to make into a career? Like, how did you kind of decide what was going to be in what bucket?
That's a really good point, because I've had, family members struggle with that. Like my brother, he was really into mechanics. Like he was just really good at fixing cars for some reason. But he ended up going into accounting, and because he decided that, like for him, that was more of like a hobby than a job. And for me personally, deciding, not to say like mechanic is definitely a job, it's just for him, he decided that, accounting was more or less where he wanted to take his career. But he For me personally, in terms of deciding whether robotics is like a hobby versus a job, I guess it's it takes a lot of self-reflection and kind of seeing like how it makes you feel. Sometimes, you know, you don't have to pick the things that make you like the absolute happiest that you know is your job because but it could be something that you're the most consistent with. So at least for me with engineering, like from again, it was since I was like about 10 years old that I started to be interested in it. And I like every single year there was always something, always a different robot I was building, always a different like thing I was building. And to me that really said like, wow, like that's not a hobby because you know I'm doing it all the time and I'm coming up with new things. Like I can make a difference in the world with my skills here. And so I think for other students, when they're trying to think, you know, what's a hobby versus a job, if you're thinking of, you know, ways where you can, you know, better the world or, you know, better something, even just one person's life with what you're doing, then, you know, it could definitely be a career for you. And as long as it makes you happy as well, if it's something that makes you happy, something that you don't even have to be good at it yet, you know, you can work to be good at it. Yeah, I guess that's the thing that was different. And because for me, the hobby is something that has always stuck with me as well as animals and my interest for animals. I had like every dog breed like memorized, and I used to sit and I watched like Dogs 101 and Cats 101, like when it would come on cable back when I was a kid. You'd have to, you know, you'd have to set an alarm on the time of the day when it would come on because you didn't have like YouTube or anything to watch it until much later. But yeah, so that for me, it just ended up being a hobby because I thought, you know, I hate seeing animals sick and I couldn't deal with that. And I thought, how could I, you know, end up making a change if, you know, I can't handle like seeing any kind of negative in an animal? How am I going to actually make an impact if I can't do kind of the basics of a job is you have to actually like help sick animals. You have to see animals when they're not well. And so I thought, oh, okay, I can't do that. But with engineering, I could do like when there was a challenge, I could solve it. And that's what made me think, yeah, I could do this forever kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a great way to kind of be able to make that decision. Like, so our last question is going to go to you, Emily, and I'm going to put you on a little bit of a time crunch. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to answer this, but do you have any advice on comparisons between yourself and others, either external comparisons or internal comparisons? It's a little bit of a tough one to tackle in 3 minutes, but basically, if anybody's being compared to you or you're being compared to anybody else, how do you think someone can kind of tackle that?
Well, don't compare yourself to others, period. It's like at the end of the day, you do what's right for yourself. I mean, you know, I joke around. I'm on my third career, you know, path, you know, and with the, you know, third industry, and with each industry, I've been there, you know, had at least, you know, 8 job titles, you know, my first job and stuff like that. And, you know, the grass is always greener. And to me, you know, in my earlier career, I was exposed to other sister companies and I looked at them and all I kept thinking is, oh, okay, so that person is the same person as this person, right? So it's, to me, it kind of came into, I don't compare myself to others, and when people compare myself to say, well, how do you do it, and it's like, I just do. You should just focus on yourself and what you want to achieve and what you want to do, you know, the whole, you know, balance. But stop comparing yourself to others, and when you want to compete, you compete with yourself. Try to make yourself better. You know, when, you know, Corey's talking about goals and, you know, how to get motivated, at the end of the day, if, you know, you have a plan to achieve a goal and you're not getting there, don't change the goal, change the plan, right? Still get there, still keep your focus. But at the end of the day, compete with yourself. For me, at the time, yeah, I was very career driven and all that. And it was great, you know, and, you know, my first 15 years of my life, you know, I got, you know, promoted, you know, got the big money, that's fine. But then I had kids and then my priorities changed. And then now I wanted to, you know, balance. And so I took the other role with TTC, and it was, I went, you know, I joke around, I went from automotive, which was, you know, 100% effort, to TTC where it was 50%. And I went back 30 years in time. They used to have overhead projectors still. So it was like, And at the time, that those 9 years afforded me the opportunity to not only work, continue on and, earning money, but also spending time to volunteer. And I did run first FLL. I was a coach for 4 years, right? And so, and I remember running into my old boss who was there with his daughter, whatever. And he's like, oh, wow, you're doing it. And goes, yeah, it goes, because if I would have still worked for you, I wouldn't have time to be here coaching my son. So at the end of the day, don't compare yourself to others. Know what you want to do, what your goal is life. And for me right now, I want to retire, but I'm 60. I've worked all my life. I want to be able to travel. So know what you have and don't compare yourself to others. Don't compare yourself if that person has a bigger house or the more money. It doesn't matter as long as you're satisfied with what your lot. And if you're not, change it. I look at my job and first, one of my first bosses, the one that kept giving me the raises, gave me this advice early on in my career. And he says, when you look at a job or anything in life, you look at 3 things. You look at, are you happy? Do you like what you're doing? Do you like the people that you're working with? And are you making enough money, period, right? Because why were you going to do a job unless you're getting paid? And they're saying when you have all 3, then you're happy and you stay and you're not going to look. When you're down to 2, you kind of, okay, maybe I can change some stuff. But when you're down to 1 or nothing, that's the time to move. And that's when I've done that with my, right? I'm on my 3rd and everybody's like, oh, you did it. And I'm like, because I know for me what my strengths and weaknesses are. So I'm not afraid of change. My husband, on the other hand, is in the same shift in the same hall for 16 years, right? But I respect him for that. And I'm not going to, ridicule him because, again, his goals are different. He likes knowing everything and likes being comfortable and stuff. So at the end of the day, don't make comparisons. Just do what's right for you.
That's excellent advice to end off with. So thank you to our panelists for joining in for the 2021 Girls in STEM Olympics. This was an excellent discussion, and I'm so happy that the audience liked it as well and was able to, ask the panelists some questions. We do wish that we would be able to answer all of them, but sadly we have to kind of cut off. But thank you again to all the panelists. This was a great discussion, and we look forward to seeing you guys all next year.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Bye. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much. Bye, guys.
Hello, everyone. It was so inspiring to see each team compete in all of the challenges. The results from each team were incredible. We hope you all had fun. Now, it's time to hand out some hardware. We're going to call out the scores of our top 3 teams, and I want to see everyone go wild in chat congratulating our teams. To do this, though, we're going to welcome back Cushy, who will be presenting the awards. Cushy, take it away.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And hey everyone, welcome to the awards section of the closing ceremonies. Before I announce the awards, I just want to say a few quick things. So first, many of you may have not seen me or the rest of the committee for the majority of the day, and that's because a lot of us were doing behind the scenes work to ensure that you were all able to complete your challenges as well as to support the panel and the judges' deliberation sessions. Now, while I didn't get a chance to directly talk to many of you, I did get a chance to pop in and check in with a few teams, as well as check out the Show and Innovate session. And boy, do I have to say, it was amazing to see how you all applied the things you learned from yesterday's workshops and how confident all of you were in your solutions. Now, before I present the awards, I would just like to remind everyone to please show your support to all of the team, regardless of whether or not they won, in both this chat as well as on our Discord channels. While you hype everyone up in the Discord channels, don't forget to use some of the amazing emotes, reactions, and emojis many of our participants came up with this weekend. So, as many of you know, we did have an emote challenge this weekend, and we got everyone to submit a few designs or emotes that they wanted to include in the server. We loved all the submissions, and the committee was completely blown away by what you guys had showcased. We did have a voting system, and as many of you know, many of the actually all of the emotes have been implemented onto the server already, so feel free to use them. Congratulations to the winner. Your design was amazing and it was so well crafted. It truly demonstrated what GISO was all about, and we can't wait to hear more reactions from you guys. Now it's time for our team award. It's only fair that we award many of you for all of the hard work and enthusiasm that you've put into this weekend. I know for sure that I was so excited after seeing the prize list, and I can't wait to share it with all of you. So, just to make sure these prizes are amazing, I would like to give a special shout out to the games and sponsorships team for having worked so hard on these prizes and making sure that all of you had a great time. Now, we have 4 different awards this year. We have first place, second place, and third place, as well as the Judges Award. The Judges Award is given to a team based on their ambition, their performance, presentation, and merit. It recognizes a team that may not have done the best in all all aspects of the technical challenge. However, they did exemplify and persevere through any challenges that they may have and truly impressed the judges through their creativity and every other aspect of the challenge. Before I announce the final awards, I just want to say, if you don't win, don't feel discouraged because everyone will be receiving a special surprise soon. So, the Judges Award. This team will be receiving a custom GISO 2021 trophy, as well as a surprise prize pack and custom GISO merch. You will be receiving a GISO 2021 t-shirt that you can go around and flex to all your friends for doing so great during this event. Congratulations, and I really hope that you win this. Now, without further ado, the winning team for the Judges Award is Congratulations. I really hope you enjoy your prizes, and once again, thank you for your constant enthusiasm and hard work. You definitely deserve that Judges Award prize. Now, moving right on to third place. So, our third place team, are also known as second runner-up of the competition challenges, exemplifies an excellent understanding of mechanical, electrical, and programming concepts, as well as has a really well-rounded presentation. Now, all of the members from this team will be walking away with a custom GISO trophies, a surprise prize pack, a star projector, as well as some GISO merch. You also will be receiving a custom GISO t-shirt that you can go flex around to all your friends and across school or your campus. And the third place team is Now for our second place team. So this team demonstrated excellence in all aspects of the challenge through all of the technical related things, as well as gave an amazing presentation to the judges. We really blew them away. Now, in addition to the trophy as well as the surprise prize pack, second place will be receiving Lenovo's brand new smart clock, which just came out recently, so it's going to be some really cool tech that you're getting. We also have custom GISO crew necks for all of you, so you will be able to enjoy those as well. Congratulations on second place, team. Congratulations on your second place finish. It was truly well deserved. Now, before I announce the first place winners, I just want to say that the competition was really fierce this year, and we saw a great display of female talent through the show and innovate sessions. But we all know that at the end of the day, we do have to crown one of the teams. So, are you ready to find out who it is? Before I announce the teams, I just want to say, get hyped in the chat below. We really want you to all hype this up and celebrate the winning team. It was an extremely difficult decision for the judges to make because all of you had done so well, and you truly made the judges struggle to find a winner. However, this team performed above and beyond in every single challenge and blew away their judges with their amazing presentation. Their willingness to learn and adapt definitely contributed to their success. It is my honor to announce that first place team is Not only will they be walking away with a GISO 2021 trophy, a surprise prize pack, but also an Amazon portable projector so they can watch movies on the go, as well as some cool GISO merch, which includes custom GISO crew necks. And, of course, they'll be crowned the title of GISO event winners this year. I was so happy to have met all of you amazing people. You are truly inspirations to me as well as to the rest of the committee. We really hope that you had an amazing time at GISO this weekend, and it was one of your first steps into developing a STEM interest or furthering your STEM career exploration. You had learned so many new skills, and you found so many new opportunities and friendships that will last a lifetime. Hopefully, GISO has impacted you the way it has impacted me, and I know I have a lot to be thankful for because of this event. With this being said, I would like to thank a lot of people. So a few special shout outs include Lisa, our MC, Shiroz, our event director, the committee for planning this event, team leads for supporting all of the attendees, as well as any other volunteers, the innovation fair companies, the panelists, and finally the judges. Thank you to all of you. Without you, this event would not have been possible. To ensure that everyone's allowed to share their thank yous, we've actually created a thank yous channel in the Discord. So I'm just going to give you a few moments to go head over there and find the channel. Don't type anything just yet because we're going to wait and flood the entire chat at once. So essentially this channel is going to be used for two things, just to either compliment someone or say thank you to someone who has truly impacted your weekend. This could be anyone from the committee, volunteers, team leads, judges, panelists, innovation fair companies, or just a new friend that you made. So we really hope that you flood the channel. Hopefully this has been given you enough time to kind of navigate through the channel. I'll do a quick countdown and then you're all able to flood the channel. Ready? You can flood the channel in 3, 2, 1, go! Go flood the channel right now, and thank you all so much for attending this event. I really hope that you have a great day.
Thanks, Kushi. Congratulations again to all of our teams. You all did a fantastic job. Before we wrap up the event, I want to leave you all with a few words. The world today is imperfect. There are a lot of troubling world issues going on, and we thank you all for taking the time to spend the weekend here with us. Our generation and the generations before us have made a lot of mistakes. It's up to your generation to solve them. The planet needs a diverse cast of problem solvers, well-rounded in multiple skill sets. We want to encourage new experiences, a diverse culture, and a more encompassing definition of what STEM looks like. We want you all to enter those rooms where no one who looks like you has ever entered before, and to make space for others to enter after you. And although it can be uncomfortable at first to challenge your loved ones or your own personal preconceived notions of what someone in a certain field looks like, we all need to become comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's how we challenge ourselves and grow. Based on what I've seen here today, our future is a lot brighter than anyone realizes. And with that, I say goodbye. Bye.